Before we get started with today's video, a lot of you guys ask me in the comments, how do I play Pokemon Pocket on the PC? And well, it's with an app called LD Player, and it's today's video sponsor. LD Player is a free Android emulator that lets you play mobile games straight on your PC. And LD Player 14 now fully supports Android 14. So even the newest titles that need a higher Android version run no problem. And what's really cool is you can also play the new Pokemon Champions on this as well as Pokemon Pocket, which is honestly kind of perfect for these games. The new Eco mode lets you run multiple instances at once without melting your PC, so you can have a few accounts going side by side. You get a 20 to 30% boost in frame rates with way steadier minimums. So no stuttering mid-pull, and every card animation just looks cleaner on the full-size screen. So if you want to play the smarter way, no battery drain, no storage issues, and definitely not getting interrupted while you're playing ranked, the link to download LD Player 14 free is in the description down below. Again, a huge thank you for LD Player for sponsoring today's video, but now let's hop into today's video. Hey guys, so in today's video, I wanted to go through Limitless TCG's deck listings and showcase the off-meta picks. And now what I mean by that is, well, if you look at this, we have over 1,000 players playing some sort of Sleep Core. Now, I could say that's one of the best, most played decks this format, but I'd rather look at the decks that honestly deserve a little bit more recognition. So we're going to start off all the way down here at around post 25 most or least played decks. And with that, we're going to start things off with the Iron Paradox Pokemon deck list right here. Now, there's a ton of different variations of this deck, but this one is just so completely simple that it just works so well. You have the two Iron Valiants that say any of your other future Pokemon reduce their energy requirements for their moves by one colorless. And if you have two Iron Valiants on the bench, well, then every single one of your Pokemon here, the Iron Crown, the Iron Boulder, and the Iron Leaves, will all just minus both colorless. So that means Iron Leaves can hit for one Psychic, Iron Crown hits for free, and then your Iron Boulder can hit for 2 psychic energies for all the way up to, I believe, 140, maybe 120 damage. Yes, 120, 140, especially if you're holding that future booster energy capsule, which is pretty amazing. On top of that, you get free retreat with the double peculiar plazas in this deck, so you don't ever really have to worry about being locked in, and you have some disruption being Sabrina as well as Cyrus to close out games. Now, one big issue is you don't really have anything to counter Sleep Core. So if they put you to sleep, you're kind of just hoping you flip a coin flip for heads. Otherwise, if Sleep Core didn't exist, I think this would be closer to the top 10 most played decks because there's no EX Pokemon and your opponent would have to knock out at least 3 of your Pokemon in order to win the match. And to be able to hit your opponent for 0 damage with something like Iron Crown and potentially hit all the way up to 70, 90 damage, depending on their board state, is kind of nuts. So definitely a deck that I think deserves recognition in one of our top 10 off-meta decks in today's video. Now let's move on to the next one. And it's actually going to be Dark Tina. I know, crazy, but I do think Dark Tina is kind of an off-meta pick. I know, wild time to even say that, especially when this deck was running ranked rampant for the longest time. I think when we first got ranked. However, this deck really is one of those, higher ceiling decks, I believe. There is your Giratina that can ramp on the bench, or in the active spot, there's your Darkrai that can attach an energy from the bench and chip your opponents, and then there's a single Indeedee that can help you heal your Pokemon. Your Pokemon that can go all the way up to 190 HP on your Giratina EX, as well as 180 HP for your Darkrai, and that's with the combination of starting planes as well as Giant Cape. And unless your opponent has something that can one-shot you, you can kind of stay alive long enough to win yourself the game, especially with things like Lucky Ice Pop, maybe even Sabrina to slow down tempo, a Field Blower to also disrupt your opponent's active Pokemon or their stadiums, as well as a Cyrus to close out games, especially if, say, start with something like a Mega Pokemon that you can chip damage to, and then they retreat for later on, and all you have to do is build up your Pokemon, bring them back in, and then potentially hit for 150 with your Giratina and another chip damage with your Darkrai to just clean them out. I'm thinking more specifically something like Mega Absol outside of your opponent healing that chip damage for 20, so you can just win the game that way. all in all, a pretty solid deck. The only thing that really stands in its way is Oricorio. I mean, once that Pokemon existed, yeah, these full EX decks just never stood a chance. But it's still kind of cool to see some players doing rather well in tournaments with Dark Tina. I wonder if it'll be even better in this next set. Moving on, we have to talk about King Gambit here. I love this card, especially with the combo of Glamora. Glamora's ability, Shattering Crystal. You flip a coin, I believe if heads, your opponent gets no point. So if they knock out both of your Glamoras, well then they get 0 points, but now your King Gambit comes in and hits for 140. And let's say you get 2 King Gambits online and you lose a Nihilego, and you lose a King Gambit and a Nihilego, and your final King Gambit's there, and you flipped 2 heads on your Shattering Crystal. Well, you know what? You're going to hit your opponent for 240 damage, potentially 280 if you gave a Rescue Scarf to one of your Glamoras, and then they knocked him out 3 times while you flipped 3 heads. I mean, that's like probably never going to happen except for maybe 1 game, and that would be quite the cinematic game. However, just having all those options and potential ways to just scale your damage for King Gambit, and it's another non-EX deck, so your opponent has to knock out 3 Pokemon, I think really makes this a solid deck. It is quite unfortunate that a lot of players didn't find more success with this deck, but again, I really do think a lot of these decks today you're going to see did not perform better because of things like Sleep Core. I mean, it's kind of hard when you just hit tails back to back to back and stay asleep. So just a quick caveat, I think this is a great deck. That's our 3rd deck for today. Let's move on to the next one. All right, now we're going to look at a Terapagos deck with 3 baby Pokemon being Magby, Pichu, and Mantike, because Terapagos deals an extra 20 damage for each different energy. And the way you run this type of deck, you guys, is the energy that you choose for your deck are going to be something like Grass Fighting Dark, something that's not the 3 generating energies here. So that essentially gives you 6 potential energies in this deck. And the really cool thing I love about this deck is they're also running the Altaria right here, and Altaria can deal 100 damage to have 2 energies that don't match each other. So that's really cool. It synergizes with each other. On top of that, they have a single copy of Area Zero here, since every Pokemon outside of Altaria is a basic Pokemon. You could always use Area Zero and potentially find your game-winning cards like Sabrina or Cyrus. However, one thing that this player decided to run in this deck, again, this is the best performing Altaria Terapagos deck, they decided to run a potion, which, I mean, I guess kind of makes sense, but I would probably run Lucky Ice Pack for the benefit of potentially having 1,000 potions if you're lucky, right? But yeah, all in all, a really cool deck, and I just love these multi-energy decks that work so well. Next up is a Mega Charizard combo deck, and I love this type of deck. Our opponent here is running 2 types of Charmeleons, which I think is kind of interesting. Maybe the Charmeleon with 3 energies and 50 damaging move is meant to counter something like Oricorio. You give it a Rocky Helmet, and then it's going to knock out the Oricorio the following turn. However, this is a pretty solid deck because it gives you so many potential options, right? You have your Entei that draws for you. You have your Charmander that can evolve into Charmeleon, but then also your Mega Charizard X that can start hitting for only 3 energy and deals 100 damage. And then if you have 110 or less HP, your Pokemon actually hits for 180, potentially 200 if you give that Pokemon the Rocky Helmet. And now one thing I really do like about this variation is you do have that Pokemon Center Lady. So you could give something like your Entei the Rocky Helmet, right? Give it the energy, and that if something like Igglybuff hits you well across 2 turns, that Igglybuff is going to knock itself out, give you 1 prize point. And then what you could do is if you're still asleep, Pokemon Center Lady, hard retreat into something like your Charmeleon, double Flame Patch, go right into your Charizard X, give it that extra energy, and then knock out your opponent's second Pokemon. So like this deck actually feels pretty strong, and I'm quite surprised it isn't higher in the current meta. And to be honest, that's probably just because Mega Charizard Y is just better than X, but I do like the combo. It's cool. Next up is a Pokemon that honestly, I wish it would do better, and that's going to be the Jolteon, double Jolteon EV box combo here. You're running 1 EVEX, you're running 2 boosted evolution EVs, and then you're running the Jolteon EX that has the ability Electromagnetic Wall, deals chip damage every time your opponent has energy, which is really good because you're also running double Cyrus here. So if they're trying to build something on the bench, you could just grab them, knock them out. But then we also have the Jolteon here, where if you're going second, you can play your Eevee, boosted evolution, evolve right into your Jolteon, and then just one-shot them by hitting them for 60 damage, potentially all the way up to 80 damage if you're using your Eevee bag, or up to 100 damage if you're using 2 Eevee bags and a red into an EX. But there's like, I don't think any EXs that are going to get knocked out from one energy, right? I just don't think it's going to happen. I mean, maybe a Suicune, right? No, I don't think so. I don't think Suicune makes sense at all here. So yeah, a deck list that I hope in the future becomes a little bit more relevant with a little bit more support. But as of right now, with all the Mega Lucarios and stuff like that, it's kind of rough, man, especially when you don't even have a counter like Oricorio in this deck. But it's still a really solid deck, especially if you don't go into those matchups. You can really catch some opponents that want to build energy on their board. You can catch them off guard with this deck. So shout out to Jolteon players. Next up is a very familiar Deckadewee deck. And I say familiar because this is the deck that I piloted and got second place in one of the early tournaments of this month, actually, for this most recent set. And the idea is very simple. You have your Pheromosa that can snipe, but you also have a Deckadewee non-EX and an EX to help you just knock things out from the board. There's a lot of mind games happening here because of that red card. And since tournaments are open listed, in fact, I have an entire video on my channel. You can go check it out. Maybe I'll link it here somewhere if you want to see the whole tournament performance where I go through every single round, but I kind of gave a spoiler already. I got second place. And then Teal Mask Ogerpon is to counter Sleep Core because best believe it, everyone and their mother was playing it. This was a ton of fun to play this deck, and I might revisit it in the next set. All right, we have 3 more decks we're going to talk about, and this one is Flareon EX with Walking Wake, and you're going to run 2 energy. Actually, no, I think you only run 1 energy in this deck, and it's Fire Energy, because the idea is your Mantike can charge up your Walking Wake or potentially even your Klefki. And the reason you do that is that way Klefki, you can just discard it after it takes the energy and then play something like Professor Soda straight to your Walking Wake, which then allows you to hit your opponent for 60 damage and then 20 to each of their bench Pokemon. And then you have a Teal Mask Ogerpon that just stops Sleep Core from doing any of its thing. Honestly, I love this. I've never played this deck. I think I want to try to play a variation of this deck because it's one of those wacky cooks that I would definitely just enjoy playing like 6, 7, 8, 9 games, just enjoying it. I don't know if I would enjoy it in ranked, maybe in a tournament setting, that's for sure. But yeah, definitely probably one of the more spicier cooks in today's video. Now we have 2 more decks to showcase. Next up is the Fluttermane EX with the Mega Gardevoir EX and a Diancie and a Meloetta with the Mega Diancie EX coming out. I wonder if you could potentially play it in that deck. However, this was pretty solid because Fluttermane's effect of just saying, hey, once you use my move, your opponent can't use any sort of trainer cards, no Cyruses, no nothing. So it slows down tempo for your opponent. It saves you a turn. And on top of that, usually sets you up to just win the following turn. As long as they can't knock you out at 130 HP or potentially 70 HP with the Ancient Booster Energy Capsule. All in all, a pretty solid deck. And then finally, a deck that I feel like should get a little bit more recognition is the Lucario, but not Mega Lucario. Mega Lopunny EX. People just forgot this card existed, and I still think it's a fantastic card because even if you're hitting double tails, your opponent gets confused, and now they have to flip to see if they even hit you. On top of that, we're boosting our damage with double Lucario fighting coaches, and we have double Hitmontops that we can take benefit from with a Cyrus to close out games. I just think this is such a good overall consistent deck. And I say that even though it's a coin flip deck, but we do have Will here to guarantee at least 1 heads with our Rapid Smashers attack. But there you guys have it, 10 off-meta decks this season that I felt like really deserved a little bit more recognition. You know, they're not Mega Sceptile, Mega Lucarios, they're not Sleep Core, but there's still 10 decks that were a lot of fun and spicy. So with that, guys, if you're still trying to climb the ranked ladder and you don't want to use a super meta deck, well, maybe you use one of these decks. Anyway, with that, guys, let me know in the comments what you think. Don't forget to like, hype, and subscribe. And with that, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.